Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Supatees. I am a multi-rank 1 Druid player, and I'm here today to bring a quick rundown of Balanced Druid in Legion. So obviously, a lot of the players moving into Legion are trying to pick what spec they want to play, and a lot of them maybe don't know what to expect. So in this video, we're going to run down what's changed for Balanced Druid, what's fun, what's interesting, what's new, what's gone. There's a lot to go over, so let's get started. So the first part of every class, which is important in Legion, is the artifact weapon. The Scythe of Elune is for the Balanced Druid. Now, every class usually gets one active new spell, and for the Balanced Druid, that new spell is New Moon. Now, this ability is very cool and definitely exciting for PvP. It starts off as a very quick casted, small hitting ability. As you can see, just a tiny little star. Then when you cast it again, it's slightly longer, a little bit bigger of a star. And then finally, on your third time casting the spell in a row, you drop a planet on your opponent's head. Now, something important to note, as you can see in the top left of my screen, is that we have no Eclipse Bar. The Eclipse Bar is gone. No more headaches of juggling, am I in Solar, am I in Lunar? Instead, now we have one resource bar, which is called the Astral Power Bar, which builds up here, Astral Power. And you can see as I casted those 3 moon spells, I built up about 70 power. Now, with that power, I can expend it on Star Surge. And you see the wolf there. That was a cool thing too. That's from our artifact weapon as well. Every time you shoot a Star Surge, you have a chance to shoot out a Spirit Wolf at your target as well. But you can of course spend that Astral Power on Star Surge, and then as you build up your Astral Power through casting damaging spells, you can also spend that power on Starfall, which is a very powerful area of effect. Now, Starfall has changed quite drastically. Instead of applying it to ourselves, we now place it on the ground as an AoE. Now, Starfall will also boost the damage of our dots, which is very important. It's a huge scaling ability, so if you're in an arena, you can get a Starfall on 3 players, all fully dotted. You're going to do some crazy AoE, especially in Battlegrounds. Balanced Druid is easily the top damage dealer in random battlegrounds, and even in most cases in 3v3 as well. So if you're going to be rolling into Legion and you want to play a Balanced Druid and you want to play a class that does a ton of damage, Balanced Druid is the class that you want to be playing. Now, as you can see on my bar, Sunfire has returned. It wasn't really gone, but instead of having only one dot at a time, we now have Moonfire and Sunfire available at the same time. So as a Balanced Druid, you're looking to spread those dots onto as many targets as possible, and then at that point you're looking to use Starfalls or Star Surges in between, then get your hard casted abilities off as Solar Wrath and Lunar Strike. That's kind of your general rotation. Your main focus should be to have damage over time, Sunfire and Moonfire on as many targets as possible, and then juggle your Astral Power between Star Surge and Star Surge. Pretty basic rotation, and then of course cycling in our new spell, New Moon, Half Moon, and dropping a planet on somebody's head, Full Moon, to add in a ton of burst damage. Now you can save up your Astral Power to expend it with 2 Star Surges right after a full moon. That will do a ton of burst as well. It's completely up to playstyle. You'll want to play around with it. I'm just showing you what you should expect. So Balanced Druids on the damage front, they are looking pretty sick. Now let's look at the crowd control and utility. So in Legion, all of the Druids lost Cyclone as a baseline spell. It was then converted into an Honor talent for Balanced Druids. So if we take a look at our Honor talents, we can choose to opt into Cyclone. It hasn't really changed. It's a little bit longer of a cast time, so it might be a little bit more frustrating to use, but overall, Cyclone has always been a really powerful crowd control effect, so looking good on the crowd control front as well. And then, of course, Solar Beam, nothing changed here, baseline at least. It is a minute cooldown, silencing the area for 8 seconds and locking the opposing caster out if you catch them on the cast time. Now, a cool mechanic with our artifact weapon is that if we successfully interrupt our primary target, it will reduce the cooldown of Solar Beam to 45 seconds. 45 seconds is still reasonably long, but when we take a look at an Honor talent called Summer Solstice, we can reduce the cooldown further by 30 seconds, meaning that we have a 15-second cooldown Solar Beam. That's on the same front as Kick or Pummel. It's very crazy, especially against double caster comps. which is why you'll more often be opting for the Summer Solstice talent. It's important to know that you sacrifice Cyclone. You will not have Cyclone at all to go for that cool 15-second cooldown Solar Beam. So you really only want to do it if you know you can get away with it, or if you're playing with a DPS that already has that diminishing return, such as a Warlock with Fear. You may opt to just not take Cyclone for this lower cooldown interrupt, because if you're good with landing interrupts, you can get some pretty sick interrupt chains off on healers. So I definitely really enjoy taking the Summer Solstice talent. So overall, Moonkin still looking really good on utility, and then of course Entangling Roots. Nothing changed here. Still just an 6 or 8 second root with a 40-yard range, reasonable cast time. So Balanced Druids through Cyclones, Silence, and Roots and Bash carry a lot of decent utility to their toolkit as well. Now looking at defensive cooldowns, this is kind of where Balanced Druids are lacking. We only have Barkskin as a primary defensive cooldown. That is basically it. I have opted to talent into Renewal, which is a 2-minute cooldown, 30% heal. As most of the melee DPS in Legion have some pretty crazy mobility, I find it hard to actually get away from anything with Displacer Beast, and more often you're better off just having Renewal as a quick pick-me-up when your healer goes into CC, rather than trying to jump into a mobility arms race with a Subtlety Rogue who's constantly teleporting to you. So it's still up to your playstyle. You're going to want to try out both while you're playing through it. Of course, I'm only in beta, so my experience is limited as well, but I'm just trying to give you guys the expectations. Obviously, defensively, we can opt to take the Guardian Affinity, which will then allow us access to 10% damage reduction and a ton of Bear Form abilities. You want to juggle these Bear Form abilities basically on cooldown. You're just going to be mashing them. And Frenzied Regeneration now has been changed, which means that it will heal you for 50% of all the damage you've taken in the last 5 seconds. That is a lot of hit points, and it has 2 charges. So if you're getting, you're going to get targeted, you're going to get trained down, the Guardian Affinity will allow you more defensive capabilities. And then if you don't think you're going to be trained down, you'll probably go for the Restoration Affinity, which allows you Swift Mend, Regrowth, and Rejuvenation. It's important to note that you don't have those abilities if you do not take the Resto Affinity. You will only have Healing Touch as your healing spell if you do not opt for Resto Affinity, so it's quite a gamble. Depends on the playstyle. In 2v2, I've been taking Guardian Affinity. In 3v3, I've been switching between Guardian and Resto, depending on if I know that I'm going to be targeted. Now, anyway, I know a lot of you guys have been looking for talent trees, talent builds. You may want to know what is the best AoE build, what is the best burst build for your talents. Overall, if I can manage to drop combat here, I will go over it. This build that you're looking at right now is kind of my standard. I take it against most things, if not everything. Star-Lord just reduces the cast time of your Lunar Strike and your Solar Wrath when you have Empowerment, so after you cast a Star Surge, you'll have an Empowerment. But I've been opting for that, and this rotation usually gets me at the top of the damage meter quite often, especially in a random battleground. And then when we look at the honor talents, I usually opt for this build unless I feel like I really need Cyclone to peel for my team. Fairy Swarm is an interesting choice. This is the one row that I do juggle quite a lot. Fairy Swarm is nothing like it used to be. Now instead it reduces the target's movement speed, which is kind of negligible. The most important part of this is that it reduces their chance to hit by 50%. So if you notice a monk tossing out some Fists of Fury and you throw up a Fairy Swarm, he's going to miss quite a lot. I've noticed that it procs quite often, so a Windwalker Monk Fist of Fury and suddenly sees miss. He's looking at his screen like, what's going on? There's no damage going on. What's going on? So Fairy Swarm can catch a lot of players off guard that don't know how it works. But I feel like moving later into the expansion, when people get used to it and learn what it does, that it'll be countered very easily by healers dispelling it. So overall, in a double DPS 2s where it can't be removed, it is very strong. But for utility purposes, a 15-second cooldown Solar Beam is really strong, and Cyclone is really strong. So generally speaking, I will switch these two. But for your AoE damage build, like if you're playing with a Warlock or in a random BG, you just want to top damage, taking this spec for your honor talents, just take a screenshot here, and then taking this build in your normal talents, you will top damage, going over that rotation that I was doing earlier with Moonfire and Sunfire and Starfall. This is kind of your AoE bread and butter build. Now, if you're going for a bursty comp, you're playing with a mage, you're going to be using polymorph a little bit, you're going to opt to go for Warrior of the Elune. Now, Warrior of the Elune makes your next 2 Lunar Strikes, aka Starfires, instant cast, so it allows you a little bit more instant burst. And then you're going to run Astral Communion, and Astral Communion just bumps up your Astral Power 75, so that's going to give you a Star Surge. You pair that with Warrior of the Elune to give you an instant Starfire, that'll grant you another Star Surge, so you can see already this is just granting you a lot of instant cast burst, which is already very powerful. Generally, I will switch between Incarnation and Soul of the Forest as well. If I'm going to be running for an AoE build with a Warlock, I might opt for Soul of the Forest, but if I'm running for a burst one, I'll run Incarnation. You can run Incarnation for the AoE build as well. You'll get a lot of haste. It's really going to have to be tested further to identify which is exactly better. Overall, Incarnation is slightly better in my opinion because it lasts 30 seconds, so if you get crowd controlled a little bit, you don't lose out on your entire Incarnation like you would with Celestial Alignment, so I generally like Incarnation, but either way, this is the spec that you're going to be running if you're running a bursty comp with a rogue or a mage. And then your honor talents will change slightly. You're going to be going for Moonkin Aura, which then grants Star Surge the ability to give your entire team 15% more crit. That's really important, especially during burst opportunities, so you'll be getting a lot more crit during those bursts. Generally speaking, I find Crescent Burn to be better than Celestial Downpour. Starfall by itself doesn't deal a lot of damage. Maybe in a random battleground you would go for Celestial Downpour, but in a 3v3 arena situation, I find Crescent Burn still more powerful. You're going to be spamming Moonfire basically whenever you're moving, so an extra 35% damage on that direct Moonfire is definitely worthwhile. So now that we've covered the talents of the Balanced Druid, let's go over that rotation a little bit further in detail. So now I went over the AoE damage rotation previously, but now we'll go over the single target burst. So if we want to do single target burst, we get our dots up, we'll activate Astral Communion, use a Star Surge, Warrior of the Elune Starfire into Star Surge into another Starfire, and that's kind of our instant cast burst rotation. We can do that every minute and a half basically. We can do it a little bit more with Warrior of the Elune, so you want to cycle Warrior of the Elune when it comes off cooldown as soon as possible. And then in between, of course, you're going to be casting, go through your new moon spells. You're really not limited. You can cast whatever you feel like based on the situation. If you feel like there's enough time to get a full moon off, there's no interrupts, you fake casted them, go for it. You're not limited by your eclipse anymore, so whatever you feel like casting, you definitely want to go for it. But it's very important as a Balanced Druid that you're always doing something. You want to have high actions per minute. You want every global cooldown committed to something. So if you're on the move, you're going to be using Moonfire. If you're not on the move, you should be trying to squeeze out some wraths or trying to squeeze out a new moon to build up for that rotation into a full moon. And then we've got Warrior of the Elune, so we'll go into our little burst rotation. We're going to save the second Warrior of the Elune charge until we get an empowered Starfire, which is after we can shoot a Star Surge. Generally speaking, you don't want to use Warrior of the Elune until you can shoot 2 empowered Starfires if you want to go into the most effective DPS. But basically, you always want to be doing something. So if I'm sitting here, I'm getting pressured, I'm getting attacked by a melee, it feels like I'm not going to be able to do anything, I'm just going to keep spamming Moonfire. Keep your dots up, try and keep out as much pressure as possible. Then when your burst comes up, Astral Communion, drop some Star Surges on some people, and that's basically it. It is quite simple, and you will pick it up very fast, and you'll be topping the meter pretty quickly. Now, healing wise and utility, we have Innervate back. It doesn't give mana, but it makes your healer's spells free. It's important that you can only cast this on your healer, not yourself or a DPS. A small little tip is that Innervate actually grants 20% haste to your healer as well, so you can use it as a healing boost. Very important to use it like that. If you see that your healer's getting pressured, he's struggling to heal through damage, pop an Innervate on him. He'll get some free spells, he'll get 20% haste. It's a really good support ability. I'm definitely going to be looking to find the best opportunities to use that when I'm practicing Balanced Druid. But overall, Balanced Druid is looking great. It's looking fantastic. It is a lot of fun, does a ton of damage, has decent support. It's looking to be one of the best classes currently, at least competitively, in 3v3 Arena. So if you guys are looking to play a Balanced Druid, definitely check it out. My name is Subitees, and I am signing off.